Thank you, Francine. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for joining during this morning with these training sessions. Today, we are going to be talking about the EFT functionality for account payables on Microsoft Dynamics GP. Hope that you can enjoy the session, and as always, do questions. Just let us know your comment and any concern that you may have. But as just some basic rules, just write the questions, so the comments you have in the questions and answer some pane, or you can enable your microphone at the end of the training, and we can resolve all the doubts or the questions that you have. Okay, well, today there is not too much slides to present, so we are gonna go directly to the action, just some basic concepts at the beginning as always, and then we are gonna do the demo. Okay, so let me switch to my GP client. Well, just to let you know, the EFT is say for electronic fund transfer. That's a GP functionality that allows us to generate some file with a special format and content, and that file will be sent later to the bank system, and then the bank is gonna make a fund dispersion to third-party bank accounts. In a short term, that's the same making payments to vendors electronically. Okay, some features. Using EFT is a useful functionality when you have some scheduled days to do massive payments. For example, you can group all the payments by weekly or bi-weekly or once in a month, and then you do the payment for all the burden or for all your due invoices. So that's gonna be useful having this feature when you have some massive payments to do. Another thing is that using EFT payments will allow you to avoid any mistake or any error that you can do when taking entry manually when you're using directly the bank system or the bank portal that allows you to do the transfers or to do the payments. Another feature is that you only need to do just one-time configuration for your bank account or for your checkbook in GP, and just one-time configuration for your vendor information. Then you need to make any reconfiguration just in case when if you change your bank account to do the massive payments, or if your vendor change its own bank account, or maybe adds another account. Well, one important thing here is that so in order we can have the EFT file, the EFT functionality working in the system, there are some previous work that we need to do together with the bank representative, because we need to get from them all the information that they can provide us. So about what are the rules, what are the formats, what are the specifications or the definitions they have, so we can send or transfer to them electronic information so they can do the fund dispersion. So as always, we need to contact them and work close to them, so we can have that information, that we can have all the details required, and then we can proceed with making the configuration in the system. So let's start doing the demo. The first configuration that we need to do after you make the installation of the feature on your GP client is just going to the financial pane or to the financial home pane, and under the card section, you're gonna see the option checkbook. Take in mind that one bank account is represented by a checkbook ID on GP. So we need to select which of the checkbooks that we have configured in our system will be using to make the electronic payments. In our sample, I'm going to use the First Bank checkbook. I have some information here, but well, the main information available for EFT is the one that is present in the window when the window is showing up when you click on the EFT Bank button that is located in the bottom side of the window. When open the checkbook EFT Bank maintenance window, we need to enter the information that the bank provides us for our bank account and the information they normally use to do electronic payments or to do electronic transfers. All the banks have its own information. It depends. The information depends on the region, depends on the bank itself, and even in some cases, it depends on the bank branch. Whatever it is, the bank has to provide you that information, and you can just enter that information here. The first thing that we need to take into account is just selecting a bank, country, or region. Depending on the region or the country where the bank is located, some fields and some information can become required, others don't, or some information won't be available to be entered in the configuration window, or some validation or some configuration rules can change. For our sample, I'm going to use a bank located in Canada. You can see all the countries that are available. GP already has some predefined logics or predefined configuration that we can use depending on the country or depending on the region. If your company is located in one country or one region that is not listed here, you will have the option to choose other one, other two, other three, or other four options. Those options will allow us to make like a customized configuration depending on the region or depending on the country that our company is located. If, for example, if you don't want this specific checkbook ID will be used for electronic payments, you have to choose the option none. We will write out all the fields or log all the fields, and then you click OK, and that will specify that this specific checkbook won't be useful for EFT. You can have all the checkbooks that you want or that you need to use configured for EFT. For example, you can have one bank account to make electronic payment for national vendors, and then you can have another bank account which could be in the same bank, in the same branch or different branch, or in any other bank to make payments for foreign or stranger vendors. Let's say I'm going to use from my sample a bank that is located in Canada. One thing we need to do is just to choose what is the country code. If I don't know, I will look for that code in my predefined list. And I have to enter the ISO currency code, which for Canada is Canadian dollars. The transit routing number, the bank account number, and the other fields, as I stated before, is information that you need to receive from your bank account. And in some cases, if you don't know that information, you can make a search on Google. Actually, I did it just to get the information. You can make a search on Google for transit router number and the name of your bank, and that will try to get well, more specific information. So for now, I'm going to enter just any number here. The transit routing number, if you don't know what exactly it is, it represents the unique ID for the bank and for the branch, which will allow the bank to make electronic payment or electronic transactions. Each bank and each branch could have its own ID. The bank account number. The bank account number is the number of your account that you have in your bank, and that will be used to enter to make the fund dispersion. IBANs is the state for international bank account number. In some cases, when you need to make payments for foreign vendors, the bank doesn't do the transaction directly to your vendor bank account. In some cases, there is an intermediate bank, so we need to enter here what is the account number that your vendor or that you have in your in that intermediate or in that temporal bank. So for our case, we will use that. I'm gonna select enter here a name for my branch is not required. In some cases, the bank branch name is not required, but in other cases it is. What it is important is to have the code for the bank and the code for the branches. So let me see that I have here. That's 002, and they say here 002, 006, for example. Bunch of different. In some cases, it depends. It's always it depends on the specification that your bank has for electronic payments. In some cases, they require to have a check digit, which will allow the bank to verify that the bank code, the branch code, and your bank account number are correct. That registration number, well, that's an identification that you normally have with the bank for taxings or tax or fiscal purposes. In not all cases it is required. It depends on your bank name, and in some cases you have to enter some information about your bank because they normally require that kind of information in the file that we need to send to them. For example, let's say this is there is a, for example, there is a number ID that you have with your bank. Data center code is something that is important to have. Not all the banks use the data center code that is specific for Bank of Montreal, if I'm not wrong. Bank of Montreal, that is specific for that bank, and it states or indicates what will be the data center that the bank assigned to you, because some banks, for some security reason, for some specific reasons, they assign a specific site on a specific data center to process your files. So not all files can be processed in all the data centers they normally have. The next field, the next file number field, is an indication or is a consecutive counter that will indicate how many files, or is like a consecutive number that is assigned to the files that we are generating for this specific bank account. Okay, it normally begins with one, and then for each file it is generated, is going to increase it by one. The last part that we have in here in this window is the communication type and the application fields. We have two options here, and let me explain what exactly it is. Also, let me tell you that I won't use this part for the demonstration, but I will explain what it represents. If we use the application communication type, that means that normally the banks provide you with a piece of software or an application software on .exe file that you can use to transfer the file directly to the bank systems or to the bank portal. If that is the case, you can set here that you will use an application, and then you can enter here what is the path and what is the file name of that application that you will use to send the file. That means that once that you generate the file, the GP is gonna start that application so you can finish the processing of the file to be sent to the bank. If you don't have that option, so no worries, just leave it an application and leave here an application as empty. Or in some cases, the bank don't provide you with a software, it provides you like EFT File or on internet URL. If that is the case, just select internet link as a communication type and enter here what is the URL that the bank provided to you, so you can transfer or you can enter to the web page where you can upload that the file that GP generated at the moment. Okay. In some cases, that doesn't mean that in all of the cases, the transmission of the file will be automatically. It only depends on how the application and how the URL that the bank provides to you works. Okay. To finalize the configuration, we need to go to Payables Options. Just letting you know that the EFT functionality is not only working for Payables Options, we can have EFT for receivables, but receivables is not part of the demonstration that we are gonna cover today. Okay, so let's focus on Payables Options. This additional window will let me to enter some additional information or to set some behavior on how the EFT functionality will work when generating payments. Okay, the first section, EFT payment numbers, we can indicate if the EFT functionality will join or will use the current configuration that we have for the check numbers. If we set use check numbers, that means that when we generate EFT payments, it will come here to the checkbook configuration and we'll use this consecutive number that we have here. Normally, the next check number in the checkbook maintenance is used for printed checks. If you have checks on paper, so you can define that EFT can use the same consecutive number, but the strongest or the most recommended options is to allow EFT to use its own consecutive or its own document numbers. As an example, we have here to use that to allow to EFT to use its own document numbers. That means if you use check number, there is some disadvantage. That means that non-negotiable paper check will be used, and then you will lose that piece of paper that you have as a pre-printed check. Okay, so the recommendation is to let EFT to use its own numbers. The next section that we have here is EFT Payables Options. Payables per note required. It depends on the specification that your bank has. Some banks requires to generate pre-notes. Pre-notes is like a kind of text file that we generate, and it's used by the bank to validate that the vendor's information is accurate. Which vendor information we need: the vendor identification, the vendor account, and the vendor bank and the vendor bank account number. That's the information that they need normally validated. Okay. In our sample, we won't use pre-notes, but at a later time I will let you know how to generate them, to generate those files so you can send them to the bank if your bank uses them. The next section, file format, indicates that we can use one unique or one single format for this checkbook ID, or we can have several or different formats depending in the type or the class of the payment. We can have payment for business, corporate, personal, or for any. What we normally use is just one format per checkbook or per bank account. Okay. The thing is, depending on the single or based on vendor, we need to choose what will be the format that we are gonna relay or assign to the specific time. Right here, I already have one format, but I will explain that format later. As of now, I just want to use as a single format, and I'm going to select what will be the format that I will use. The latest option that I have here is we need to indicate what are the path and the names of the files that the system will generate when creating the EFT files. We have three options. We have domestic, foreign, and pre-notes. Well, domestic is an option it's like an option for when you make payments for national or for local vendors, and foreign payments is when you're making a payment for stranger vendors or foreign vendors. It's just a kind of classification or configuration that GP allows you to have, but it's not strongly required to do it. You will only enter pre-notes, path, and file name when the bank specification forces you to use payables pre-notes. Okay, so I'm gonna enter here a location. Bank. Okay. One thing that you need to take into account when entering path and file names, depending on your operating system version, it won't allow you to save files or to generate files in the same folder that your GP client is located. That means, for example, in my installation, my GP client is located on program file x86, Microsoft Dynamics GP 2018. So you cannot create any folder, or you cannot say here any file generated by the EFT functionality. So my recommendation to you, because we are having here in this kind of files some sensitive information, that's bank accounts, vendor IDs, and amounts paid to your vendors. That's sensitive information for your company. So normally use, for example, a share folder with some restricted access. Restricted access means only users which will use this functionality can have read and write control over that folder, or even a shared folder over the network. Okay. So let's go back to the window. Let's click OK, because that's my final configuration that I have here. I don't need to do any save here because I haven't did any change here. Click OK here, and then that's here. Okay, then the second part of the configuration is to create or to enter the file formats used by EFT. You have to do that by going to the card sections and under financial EFT file format. That will open the EFT file format maintenance windows. This is like, how to tell you, it's like a file structure builder or like a file structure definition method that we use to normally indicate to the system what will be the file format and what will be the content that we need to save in the file and the file that has to be sent to the bank. So since version 20, if I'm not wrong, from version 2010, Microsoft decided to include this kind of functionality because in previous version it was only predefined for some specific banks. Normally banks in the United States and Canada, and some banks in Europe. Since version 2010, he decided to open that option and allow the customer or to the companies using GP to define their own file formats depending on the banks they are working with normally. But the complexity of the file, it will depend only on your bank specifications. So that's what I have said that is important before making this kind of implementation functionality in GP. You have to talk to your bank representative and trying to get all the information, all the details in the banks, so you can identify if maybe the file format or the file specification they use can be met or cannot be met by the GP functionality. I have here in some few cases, but few cases that some customization has to be done in order you can complete with you can commit your bank specifications. But having this new functionality, it will try to cover at most information, at most specification that the banks use worldwide. In my example, but I already have a file that is already defined. Actually, it's in a predefined file format that it comes with GP. So in some cases, depending on the bank and depending on the format, you don't need to spend too much time making the definition. But let me show you some specific functionalities that we can have here. I'm going to enter another name. I'm going to let you know what exactly do we have here. We need to specify if the file format that we are working with will be usable for the payables or for the receivables series or for the purchasing or sales series. In this case, my file format is going to be only for purchasing. So that's what I have chosen. The format type will let me know what will be the format that we'll use. If you can see the list, in the list, there are several predefined file formats depending on the bank and depending on the country. We have some banks from the United States and we have some banks for Canada, okay? If none of the predefined options that we have here meet or is close to the bank specification that we have, so the only option that we have is selecting user defined. So that's mean that I'm gonna specify manually what will be the content that the file is going to have, depending on the bank specification. On format class, we need to choose if it will base for business, corporate, personal, or foreign accounts, which is similar what we did for the EFT configuration for my checkbook. If it won't be the case, so we need to choose is just not specified. The rest information or the remaining information that we have in this window is especially used to define each record type that we have on the file. So let me tell you something. When you create a file, the file we have lines. Each line will represent a record in our system. And each record will have a type of record, okay? Or it will represent, or it will have a type of line. It will be the same. So in that case, we need to specify that. For each record or for each line in the file, we need to set what will be the maximum length that the line is going to have, what will be the type, what will be the options that we need to set on that line based on what it's actually doing. Okay, so let me tell you something. Sorry, something that I missed before. The file can be a flat file, which is a test file, just a file, or it will be an XML file. It depends on the option that your banks normally use. In the record types or line types, we have several types: headers, file headers, batch header, details, addendums, supplements, batch control, file control, trading error, and etc. We have several kinds of record here, and it will depend even on the format type we chosen, or it will depend on your bank specification. But normally, the banks will have, as minimum, we have batch header, we have detail, we have batch control. And depending on the complexity, some files could have file header, batch header, details, addendas, batch control, and file control. What a header label is used for? That is normally used to specify some kind of information related to the file and what will be the purpose of the file content. It will be the same for file header. It will indicate what are the purpose of the content of the file. For example, it will be for payment local vendor, something like that. It's just informational data. But header, in some cases, the file header includes information about how many records and how many batches do we have in the file. Batch header indicates a control information or control data related with the payments or the detailed record that we have. How many records and total dollar amounts. Okay, the detailed record is represent one detailed record represent a payment to a vendor. So it will normally have who's the vendor, the ID, the name, the amount of the payment, the date, some additional information. Addendum and settlement is information that is generated to complete information related to the detailed records. Batch control or file control is just confirmation or verification data about the details that we have in the file. Having said that, I'm gonna just go to some predefined information that I have here just to move ahead with the webinar. So I already have a predefined. Okay, let me tell you something. If you have a predefined format, for example, if you choose Bank of Montreal, when you choose the Bank of Montreal, GP will automatically generate each record type for you. So you don't need to start from the scratch to build it. If you want it, you can do it. But GP already knows how this file is, and it will generate it for you. In some cases, the predefined configuration that we have done or doesn't meet 100% the bank specification. So that means that you will have to use to make some minor tuning or minor changes. For example, just changing the length, because maybe the length have been changed since this version has been released, or maybe the position, or maybe the length, or maybe the justify, or maybe the file change from number to a string or something like that. So you can do some minor changes. So that doesn't mean if it is a predefined format, you cannot make any change over it. Okay. So let's go back to my sample. And here I already have all the predefined record types for this format. In this format, we have file header, we have batch header, we have details, we don't have addendas, we don't have settlements, but we have batch control. Sorry, we don't have batch control, but we have file control. Okay. Let me show you what exactly do we have for each record. We need to specify if it is a fixed file. We need to specify what will be the length and the position, what will be the description of the column or the field, what will be the type, and some calculation and some definition options to define the field. For example, here we have, for example, we need to enter here the company ID. So the company ID will be collected from the EFT company ID field, which is located in the table checkbook electronic fund transfer. Well, you don't normally need to know exactly all the tables because there is some kind of logic or logical order or logical description for the table, so you don't need to be an expert or technical expert, so you can make the configuration. Okay, depending on the information or the file format, you can choose information coming from the checkbook, coming from the bank, coming from your company information, or coming from the vendor master table or address information, or coming from the transactional tables. Okay. So well, that's so far that I have to explain in this window. So I'm going to close it. And the last setup option that we have is to indicate to one specific vendor if that vendor will be available to make electronic payments. To do so, I have to go to the purchasing pane, and under the card section, I'm gonna open the vendor maintenance window. I'm gonna do it through here because I just want to explain one specific requirement and one specific concept that you need to take in mind. EFT works for vendors based on the vendor's addresses. As you know, one vendor can have multiple addresses. And then in the vendor maintenance window, you have to specify which of those addresses will be used as the primary or the purchase address, what will be used for remit to and for queued fund. Remit to is the address that is used to send checks. This is because in the United States and Canada, it's normal to send a payment via the postal the postal service. So, well, in other countries, that's not allowed. That doesn't allow. For example, I'm located in Colombia. Here in Colombia, you cannot send a check, or you cannot send any money value in an envelope and then use the postal service to send it to anybody. Okay. So the remit to field is the one that is used for the EFT functionality. It's the same. Please think about EFT when as you creating checks. So it will use the same prerequisite of the same premise. Okay. Having said that, so let's go to the remit or to the vendor address maintenance. And in the vendor address maintenance, you will have an EFT bank button at the bottom of the window. That will open the vendor EFT bank maintenance window and will let me choose what will be the information that for my vendor's bank account. Okay. The first thing that we need to do, that we did, was the bank information for my account. And now I need to enter the bank information for my vendor's account. So I need to specify here the same. What is the bank or country region, depending on the country or depending on the region that we select. Some of the fields will be available, others don't. If none of the region or the countries that we have here will commit or will be close to my country or to my region, then I have the option to choose other one, other two, other three, or other four. If I don't want this vendor will be available to make EFT payments, I just choose the none option. Okay, and it will be almost exactly the same information. What is the bank name? What is the transit routing number for that bank? What is the account number the vendor has on that bank? What is the international bank account number, if that is the case? What is the bank branch name, or what is the bank code and the branch code? More than the branch name, what I said a number here, but that's test. That's the name. More than the bank branch is important the bank branch code, because normally the ACH processor is uses the cost instead of the net. But in some cases, depending on your bank specification, you have to enter the bank name. Okay. You need to specify what is the type of the account. If it's a check or is a savings account, we have another option as a general ledger or loan, but that's not normally used. We normally use is checking savings. We need to enter what is the file transfer method. The file transfer method is something related with the file, with the transfer of the file class that we set on our file format, and the same information that we set in our checkbook. So we can have business, corporate, personal, foreign. The bank check digit, it depends if the bank requires that information. Termination date and date pre-notes sent is information related with the pre-notes. As I told you, pre-notes, some bank is usually when some banks require to send that kind of information to validate if the vendor information is accurate. Okay, there is some another additional information that we can enter here. It's optional, it's not required in this window, but it totally depends on your bank specification. And that's normally the title information that we need to enter for each vendor. Well, if you're starting implementing this functionality from the scratch, depending on how large is your vendor master table, but it will take you long if you want to enter this information manually. But something that you can do, you can specify this information in an Excel file, and then you can use some import method via GP or via SQL server to import this data into the database. Okay. So let's move. Once we have set up all these steps, so remember, checkbook configuration, file format, and vendor configuration. Once we have that, it's important. Once we have those three setup steps, we are ready to do EFT payments. How to do it? Well, you can use whatever of the options that we have in the purchasing module to do payments. It can be done via a computer check. If you do a computer check, so let me show you. Bill payment. When you bill a payment batch, you have to specify if that's batch. When you create the computer batch, you have to specify if that batch is using EFT. Okay, if using EFT, you have to specify here what will be the checkbook. You have to specify a checkbook that is already configured to use EFT. Okay, and then it will work normally. But instead of creating check numbers, it will create EFT documents, okay, or EFT payments. And it will be the same if you go, if you go to manual payments, if you enter here, depending on your configuration, if your posting configuration indicates that the posting date and the posting checkbook is used from your batch, you have to enter here a checkbook that is already configured to use EFT. And here in the payment, you have to choose. It will automatically change it because you have set, because this vendor is already defined to use EFT, and the batch ID that I entered to my transaction has a checkbook that is already configured to use EFT. Okay, so it will set that as default, but doesn't force you to make an EFT payment. So you can check it as a check, cash, or credit card. But for our sample purpose, we are going to use EFT. There is another information here, electronic. It is a default checked, but mostly this checkbox is related with some functionality specifically for Europe. We are not talking about that specific functionality in this webinar. So it is going to default what will be the checkbook, and will enter as the document number as the next consecutive number that we have in our checkbook. But again, it's not the check number, it's the EFT number that we set in our payables option. Okay. Once we have that, so let's enter here the amount, a comment, something like that, and then I'm gonna save, and then I'm gonna post the batch. Once the batch is posted, that's a normal and standard process in payables. What is new is this functionality that we have here, generate EFT file. If you click in that option, that will opens the Generate EFT Files window. So it will allow you to choose which series, or I'm going to generate a file for purchasing series. You have to choose the checkbook that you have already configured for EFT, and then it will look for all the batches that you have posted containing EFT transactions or EFT payments. So it will show here is a batch, and the batch will contain payments. You can have as many payments you need in each batch, and you can have as many batches as you need, okay? And you can generate one file having one batch and one batch having one payment. Or you can generate one file having several batches and each batch having several payments. So the only thing that you need to do is just to enter what will be the date for the transmission date and the settlement date. That's information used for the file format. I'm going to set it as my sample that I have here, and then choose the batch and click on the Generate EFT File. Once you generate EFT File, it will create the file and it will indicate, oh yeah, the file has been generated in the following location. That's the location that I have that's set. If you can see, the name will be EFT Scotiabank. That's the name that I set in my configuration. Then it will add the name of the checkbook. Then it will add the date of the transmission, dash a consecutive. That consecutive is the next file number that I have set in my checkbook configuration. Okay? And then it will advise you if you have to open any or to do any additional step. Once you have the file, look here. This is the file that I have generated. You can open it using any text editor, just to verify that information is in there. Having this file, you have to send it to your bank system or to your bank portal using the method that the bank already provides to you to do so. So the bank will use that information, will be validated, and will do all the fund dispersion based on the information that we have in the file. And that's it, my folks. So I don't know if you have any questions. Yes, I think so. We have a question here, so let's check.